After years of speculation and carefully worded public appearances, Michael Douglas has finally spoken with rare honesty about the reality of his marriage, shedding light on a relationship that has long lived under the glare of global fame. Rather than presenting a polished Hollywood fantasy, he acknowledged the real pressures that came with age differences, relentless media scrutiny, and the emotional toll of personal and health struggles. His words reframe the narrative, not as a story of perfection, but of endurance, accountability, and growth. By openly recognizing the moments of distance, reconciliation, and hard-earned understanding he shares with Catherine Zeta-Jones, Douglas revealed that their bond survived not because it was easy, but because both partners chose honesty over illusion. The admission resonated deeply, offering a rare glimpse into how even the most glamorous marriages require humility, resilience, and the courage to confront uncomfortable truths behind closed doors. For decades, Michael Douglas and Catherine Zeta-Jones have been viewed as one of Hollywood's most glamorous yet closely watched couples, their marriage unfolding beneath relentless media attention and public speculation. When Douglas finally opened up with deeper honesty about their relationship, he moved beyond polished red carpet answers and acknowledged the real complexities they face behind closed doors. He spoke about the undeniable pressures of fame, the challenges of significant age difference, and the strain that health battles place on both of them. Factors that tested their emotional strength in ways few outsiders could fully understand. Rather than portraying their union as flawless, he admitted that it required constant communication, humility, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. His reflection suggested that longevity in marriage is not built on image, but on resilience. There were moments of separation, periods of reflection, and difficult conversations that forced both partners to reassess priorities and personal growth. Douglas emphasized that enduring love is not about avoiding hardship. It is about choosing each other repeatedly, even when circumstances feel overwhelming. By acknowledging vulnerability instead of hiding behind celebrity status, he revealed that their bond survived because of deliberate effort, mutual respect, and emotional maturity. In doing so, he dismantled the illusion of a fairy-tale Hollywood romance and replaced it with something far more powerful, a story of partnership strengthened by adversity, honesty, and the courage to evolve together despite the spotlight constantly shining on their private lives. As the years passed, Michael Douglas came to understand that maintaining a marriage in the public eye required more than love. It demanded discipline, forgiveness, and a shared commitment to protecting what truly mattered. He acknowledged that success, awards, and industry prestige mean little if personal relationships begin to fracture under pressure. The scrutiny surrounding his union with Catherine Zeta-Jones often magnified ordinary marital struggles into headline drama, making private challenges feel public and amplified. Yet instead of allowing speculation to define their story, he admitted they learned to shut out the noise and focus on rebuilding trust during difficult seasons. Douglas spoke candidly about the importance of maturity, recognizing personal flaws, accepting responsibility, and understanding that pride can be more damaging than conflict itself. He emphasized that real partnership involves compromise and emotional transparency, especially when facing health scares and career demands that could easily pull two people apart. Rather than presenting their marriage as indestructible, he described it as something that had to be repaired, nurtured, and sometimes redefined. That honesty resonated because it stripped away celebrity illusion and revealed something universal, even in the world of fame and fortune. Enduring love survives not through perfection, but through persistence, accountability, and the courage to grow together. And reflecting on the deeper truths of his marriage, Michael Douglas made it clear that time has reshaped not only his perspective on love, but also his understanding of partnership. He admitted that early in their relationship, passion and admiration were powerful forces, but sustaining a long-term bond required something far steadier: patience, empathy, and the willingness to evolve individually without drifting apart. With Catherine Zeta-Jones, he learned that enduring commitment is not about grand public gestures. It is about the quiet, consistent decisions made when cameras are gone and headlines fade. He also acknowledged that facing serious health challenges forced both of them to confront vulnerability in its rawest form. Illness, uncertainty, and fear stripped away ego and reminded them of what truly matters. Those periods, he suggested, either break a marriage or deepen it, and for them, it ultimately strengthened their emotional foundation. By openly admitting that there were moments of doubt, distance, and necessary recalibration, Douglas reframed their story as one built on survival rather than spectacle. His candor revealed a universal truth. Lasting love is not measured by flawless appearances, but by two people choosing to fight for each other when circumstances make it easier to walk away. Over time, Michael Douglas acknowledged that one of the hardest truths to confront was how ego and pride can quietly erode even the strongest relationships. In a world where image is currency and reputation is everything, admitting personal shortcomings does not come easily, especially for someone who has spent decades at the top of the entertainment industry. Yet he suggested that real growth in his marriage to Catherine Zeta-Jones began when both of them embraced honest self-reflection instead of defensiveness. They learned that arguments are not the true threat to a relationship. Silence, resentment, and emotional distance are far more dangerous. Douglas emphasized that sustaining love required active effort, protecting private time, prioritizing family over professional obligations, and refusing to let outside narratives dictate their reality. He admitted that there were seasons when balancing careers, parenthood, and personal struggles felt overwhelming, but walking away was never the goal. Instead, they chose recalibration. That meant stepping back, reassessing values, and remembering why they committed to one another in the first place. His candid reflections reveal that behind the red carpets and award ceremonies lies a partnership that survived not because it avoided hardship, but because it confronted it directly. In speaking openly, Douglas offered a reminder that even in the brightest spotlight, enduring marriages are built on humility, accountability, and a continuous decision to grow side by side. With time and perspective, Michael Douglas revealed that the real turning point in his marriage was not a single dramatic moment, but a gradual awakening to what lasting commitment truly demands. He acknowledged that fame can create an illusion of control over career, image, even public narrative, but it offers no protection from private challenges that test a relationship. In his reflections on life with Catherine Zeta-Jones, he admitted that there were periods when external pressures, health scares, and intense media scrutiny amplified internal tensions. Yet instead of allowing those pressures to define their story, they were forced to redefine themselves. Douglas spoke about learning to listen more and defend less, to value understanding over winning an argument. He recognized that age and experience reshaped his priorities. Achievements that once felt urgent became secondary to emotional stability and family unity. Health battles in particular stripped away superficial concerns and replaced them with profound awareness of fragility. Facing uncertainty together created a new depth of gratitude, one rooted not in glamour, but in survival and shared resilience. That he also admitted that long-term love requires constant reinvention. Two people cannot remain the same over decades, especially under the spotlight, and expecting stagnation can quietly fracture a bond. Growth, he suggested, must be mutual and intentional. That meant giving each other space to evolve professionally and personally without interpreting independence as distance. It meant forgiving past mistakes rather than weaponizing them, and understanding that maturity often arrives through discomfort. Perhaps most powerfully, Douglas dismantled the myth that enduring marriages are effortless. He implied that the strongest relationships are often the ones that have faced the brink and consciously chosen restoration. Vulnerability replaced pride, communication replaced assumption, patience replaced impulsiveness. By finally acknowledging that their marriage required repair, recalibration, and repeated commitment, he transformed the narrative from celebrity spectacle into something profoundly human. His honesty underscored a universal truth. Real love is not sustained by image or admiration, but by two imperfect people willing to confront their flaws, endure hardship, and deliberately choose each other, again and again, despite the weight of time and the glare of the world watching. That I end continuing his candid reflections. Michael Douglas suggested that one of the most difficult realizations in his marriage was understanding that love alone is never enough without emotional discipline. Passion may ignite a relationship, but endurance depends on consistency, respect, and the courage to admit when you are wrong. Speaking about his life with Catherine Zeta-Jones, he implied that there were moments when exhaustion, professional demands, and personal struggles created emotional distance. What ultimately preserved their bond was not denial of those gaps, but a conscious effort to close them. He emphasized that long-term partnership requires protecting the relationship from external noise, rumors, public commentary, and the constant intrusion of speculation. In a culture that often celebrates scandal more than stability, maintaining privacy became an act of defense. Douglas acknowledged that stepping back from pride and choosing vulnerability strengthened their foundation more than any public declaration ever could. He learned that strength in marriage is not dominance or control. It is a willingness to be transparent about fears, insecurities, and imperfections. Over the years, he came to see that commitment is a daily decision rather than a single promise made at a wedding ceremony. It is found in small acts of patience, in choosing conversation over silence, and in remembering shared history during moments of doubt. By openly admitting that their journey included strain, recalibration, and emotional growth, Douglas reframed his marriage as a living partnership, one that survived not because it was untouched by hardship, but because both partners refused to let hardship define the end of their story. In his most unfiltered reflections, Michael Douglas made it clear that the greatest threat to his marriage was never scandal or headlines, it was complacency. He admitted that success can quietly breed emotional distance, that years of achievement and public admiration can create a dangerous illusion that personal relationships will simply sustain themselves. Speaking about his life with Catherine Zeta-Jones, he acknowledged that there were moments when pride, silence, and unspoken expectations built invisible walls between them. And those walls, he suggested, are far more destructive than any public rumor. Douglas confronted the uncomfortable truth that longevity in marriage demands brutal honesty, not just about circumstances, but about oneself. It required him to examine his own flaws, to accept responsibility where ego once resisted, and to understand that love without accountability eventually weakens. He realized that real strength is not measured by dominance or control, but by the ability to say, "I was wrong," and mean it. Their survival as a couple came not from avoiding fracture, but from repairing it again and again when it would have been easier to let distance grow. He also underscored that adversity either exposes the cracks in a relationship or forges it into something unbreakable. Health scares, relentless scrutiny, and personal trials stripped away illusion and left only what was real. In that stripped-down reality, he discovered that commitment is not romantic fantasy. It is discipline, sacrifice, and the courage to fight for connection when emotions are strained. By finally admitting that their marriage required rebuilding, humility, and constant renewal, Douglas revealed a truth far more powerful than any fairy-tale narrative. Lasting love is not sustained by glamour or reputation, but by two people willing to confront their weaknesses, endure discomfort, and consciously choose each other even when the spotlight fades and the applause stops. And perhaps his most striking admission, Michael Douglas acknowledged that time humbles everyone, no matter how powerful, celebrated, or accomplished they may be. He revealed that there were stages in his marriage to Catherine Zeta-Jones when the weight of expectations, both internal and external, felt overwhelming. The public saw glamour, but behind closed doors were two individuals navigating fear, uncertainty, and the raw reality of growing older together in an unforgiving spotlight. He admitted that learning to let go of control was one of the hardest lessons, because true partnership does not thrive on dominance, it thrives on balance. Douglas spoke about the danger of taking loyalty for granted, recognizing that even strong bonds can erode when appreciation fades. He came to understand that admiration must be expressed, not assumed, that respect must be demonstrated daily, not merely declared. There were moments when silence could have deepened distance, but instead, difficult conversations became turning points. Rather than allowing frustration to calcify into resentment, they chose confrontation over avoidance and rebuilding over retreat. What makes his confession powerful is not scandal, but self-awareness. He dismantled the myth that experience guarantees wisdom, admitting that growth often arrives late and through hardship. He emphasized that sustaining a marriage requires vigilance, the conscious protection of trust, the guarding of intimacy, and the humility to evolve as circumstances change. In the end, his truth was not dramatic but profound. Enduring love is a deliberate act of will. It is not sustained by public image or shared success, but by emotional courage, accountability, and the refusal to let pride outweigh connection. As he reflected even deeper, Michael Douglas acknowledged that the hardest battles in his marriage were often the quiet ones, fought not in public controversies, but in private moments of doubt, exhaustion, and self-questioning. He admitted that there were times when the demands of his career, combined with personal health struggles, forced him to confront his own vulnerability in ways he never had before. In those moments, strength was not about projecting confidence. It was about admitting fear and allowing his partner, Catherine Zeta-Jones, to see him without the armor of fame. He revealed that true partnership required stripping away performance, the instinct to appear strong, unshaken, in control. Marriage, he realized, is not sustained by reputation or legacy, but by emotional presence. There were crossroads where distance could have quietly solidified into separation, yet both chose to pause, reassess, and fight for clarity instead of surrendering to frustration. Douglas suggested that longevity in love is less about avoiding fracture and more about mastering repair, about returning to the table when pride says walk away. What resonated most in his admission was a recognition that love matures through hardship. The glamorous image that once defined their public identity gave way to something more grounded and resilient. He came to understand that commitment is not static. It must be renewed through action, empathy, and shared resilience. By speaking openly about imperfection, recalibration, and emotional accountability, he offered a sobering yet inspiring truth. Even in a world defined by spotlight and status, the survival of a marriage depends on humility, courage, and the relentless decision to protect the bond when everything else feels uncertain, long before they became one of the most iconic couples in Hollywood. Michael Douglas and Catherine Zeta-Jones lived entirely separate lives, each carving a path through the highly competitive worlds of film and theater. Douglas, born into cinematic royalty as the son of Kirk Douglas, had long established himself as a formidable actor and producer. By the late 1990s, he was known not only for his charismatic on-screen presence, but also for his reputation as a consummate professional in Hollywood, a man whose career choices were calculated yet daring, blending commercial appeal with artistic credibility. Zeta-Jones, by contrast, was a rising star from Wales, whose magnetic presence and undeniable talent had caught the attention of casting directors and audiences alike. She embodied a rare combination of classic elegance, raw energy, and a fearless willingness to take on diverse roles. Though her fame was growing, she had not yet reached the global icon status that would eventually make her one of the most recognized actresses of a generation. Their worlds first intersected at a time when both were navigating the pressures of their respective careers and personal lives. Douglas, recently divorced from his first wife, was seeking stability and companionship beyond the superficial trappings of Hollywood. Zeta-Jones, ambitious yet grounded, was seeking meaningful connections in a world that often commodified young female talent. Their meeting was anything but a cliché Hollywood encounter. It was a convergence of two individuals who each carried personal histories, ambitions, and vulnerabilities that would shape the foundation of their relationship. From the outset, their connection was rooted in more than physical attraction. Douglas admired Zeta-Jones's intellect, humor, and poise, qualities that set her apart from the countless socialites and aspiring actresses who populated Hollywood's public events. Zeta-Jones, in turn, was drawn to Douglas's maturity, depth, and the quiet confidence of a man who had experienced life's peaks and valleys yet remained open to new emotional horizons. In interviews years later, Douglas would reflect that their initial conversations revealed a shared sense of humor, a mutual respect for each other's craft, and an ability to engage in dialogue that was both playful and intellectually stimulating, a combination that rarely comes easily in relationships formed under public scrutiny. Their courtship was, in many ways, a study in contrast.